blood, the sweat, and the tears. From never giving up, and it's all earned from pain. The blood from being hit in the face by a knee, a head, or a fist, and having to finish the match. Sweat pours down your face from all the hard work you've put into this whole season. Tears drop from your face as your body feels this aching pain. I've been wrestling for 11, going on 12 years now, and I have experienced bleeding, sweating, and crying. At the New Olympic Hall of Fame tournament, it was one of the toughest tournaments in the state. I was a number 6 seed as a freshman, and on my way to the finals, I took out the number 1 and 3 seed. In the process, I busted my nose, and I was bleeding so bad that I was choking and I had to tape my face. And according to MHSAA Wrestling Handbook, you only get 2 minutes of blood time, and at about 10 seconds, I had to just tape my face. But this didn't stop me from making the finals. Only to take a loss in the blood, the sweat, and the tears of outrage, because I didn't win like my brother did, because he was the only one to win in high school. The sport of wrestling is the toughest on you physically, mentally, and emotionally. Wrestling is the toughest sport, and you got to be physically, mentally, and emotionally tough, because your biggest opponent is yourself. Wrestling is one of the most toughest, vigorous physical sports out there. From practice to a match, you can be punched, kicked, or headbutted, making you bleed. Wrestling is the most bloody without even trying. It's always a high risk of bleeding. Some will bleed a lot, some will bleed a little, and some will never bleed at all. But it's never shed easy. It brings a lot of pain that you got to fight through to finish the match or practice. Blood isn't the only risk of wrestling. You can tear a shoulder, you can break an arm, or you twist a knee, or even breaking ankles are a high risk. One of the these are all seem harsh, but they're the most common. There's always a high risk of being lifted up and coming down wrong, or headbutted and getting a black eye. And as you sit there on the mat injured or standing up, you drip sweat from all the hard work you've put in the match, only for it to come to a screeching halt. Wrestling is the toughest mentally. When the body is tired, you can't take it. It's sore from the match, from the practice grind. It works muscles you didn't even know you had. Your jaw will be sore, your neck will be sore, your arms, your legs, you name it, it'll be sore. Your muscles feel like they can break any minute now. But you have to be mentally strong. And you have to be mentally strong when you cut weight, because some will cut up to 30 pounds to 2 pounds, to some even none. You have to be tough when you have a mental strict diet, and you have to watch what you eat and drink and how much you eat and drink. The sport of wrestling takes a lot of self-discipline. It's the toughest physically, mentally, but also emotionally. Wrestling pushes your breaking point. Your emotions get the best of you, and you feel like you can't do anymore, and your emotional wreck makes you feel terrible inside. The sport of wrestling is too tough for many contenders or athletes. You lose and get upset, and you're mad and you want to cry, or your wreck worsens when your coach yells at you and can't take it anymore. Your emotion of tears turn into anger and frustration. It's tough to keep your emotions in and hold back That's what makes wrestling so tough on you emotionally. And for my graph, I asked 30 of the multiple sport athletes on the wrestling team, and over half of them said that wrestling was the toughest sport, and many of them said that the reason they picked that was because it was very physical, and there was like always high risk of getting hurt, and it was just like a sport that pushes you to your breaking point. Wrestling is the toughest on an athlete in several ways to make it the most challenging sport out there. Wrestling is the toughest on you physically because you will bleed from being punched, kicked, or even headbutted, and I've personally experienced many of these. It's the most challenging on you mentally because you have to fight through drowsiness, cutting weight, and a strict diet, and your body feels like it can't take any more of cutting weight or any of that. The sport of wrestling is also the toughest on you emotionally after wrestling pushes you to your limits, after losing a match, after your coach yells at you, after your bad attitude, after losing and you throw your headgear or something. The next time you think about wrestling, think about all the pain it takes to receive everything the sport has to offer.